We were talking with Anquinette about Weed Day, and while we do kind of laugh and joke about it, we also want to remind people that you want to make sure you are of the legal age. To talk a little bit about that and so many other things, we're going to bring in Lisa Berkey. She's the executive director for the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition. Lisa, I know we've talked to you various times before, and we always appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me again.
So we can kind of start off talking about weed because it is 420 Day. And, you go on social media, there are all these memes. But with that, when it comes to kids, you have a message for them.
Definitely. Recreational marijuana is for adults over the age of 21. And we definitely don't want our kids trying it beforehand. It's extremely dangerous for them.
So I know the Weed Can Wait campaign is underway, but does it make it more difficult with so many students being home a lot more now so than they have been in the past year? So therefore, especially high school students that maybe aren't supervised, and they may have more access to marijuana because it is legal here in the state of Michigan?
I mean, that is possible. I think it's always a difficult situation with our kids because if the parents approve of it and are using it recreationally or medically, the child in the home, first of all, is getting secondhand smoke, which is dangerous, more dangerous than secondhand cigarette smoke. But they're also seeing the decreased perception of harm. And so they right away think it's a medicine. So if it's a medicine, it's okay for me. I can take it. So I think no matter what, when you're at the home and the message that's coming from your parents, your family, your guardian, if it's being used in the home, they're getting the message that it's okay.
So it really is one of these things for parents. It's their responsibility to have conversations with their kids.
Definitely, just like alcohol. We might have a glass of wine once in a while at night, but we need to make it very clear to our kids that I'm 21, over 21, and I'm being responsible. You're not allowed to have this till the age of 21. It is illegal to drink under the age.
Lisa Berkey with us here on the MegaCast. She's the executive director for the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition. What a year this has been for you and your team.
It has. We've definitely had to, like everybody else, come up with ways to do our programming virtually, which I think has been great. Our evening parent programs have been well attended because I think parents, one, are desperate for information right now, especially in the beginning, how to have your children home all the time and how to handle all this. And in the beginning, when they were trying to be teachers as well as parents. So programming online was definitely beneficial for that. And I think even in the future, post-COVID, I think we would still keep online as an option. You can come to a live program or you can join us via Zoom, just because we've learned that it's more convenient. We may not be able to want to come out of the house. It's a snowstorm or it's raining or it's too dark. Everyone always has excuses, right? And this way, just pop on Zoom and you can learn what we're bringing to you that evening.
So do you find that students are as receptive to the online programming? Because prior to the pandemic, you would go into the schools to try to educate them on the dangers of drugs.
Definitely. I would say that we're doing more programming this year on mental health and how to have coping skills and be resilient. And I'll give you a prime example of how great a program went online. We brought in a child psychologist, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and we did a webinar for our Lakers Online 6th grade students, 7th grade students, and 8th grade students. And she talked to them about various ways of how to cope. And because it was a webinar, nobody could see them. And because it was a webinar, any questions they put into the chat were only seen by Mr. Borders. And then he was able to read them to our child psychologist. And let me tell you, 6th grade went first. The questions were phenomenal. They definitely have issues. And they wanted answers. So part of it makes me very sad that they have all this on them, but part of it makes me also like, we're here to help, and that's what we were doing. So that part makes me feel good. But the questions, even the principal was like, wow, our sixth graders asked amazing questions and we were able to help them. And I don't think that would have happened in person because they don't want to ask in front of their peers. And this way they could be totally anonymous.
Yeah, and so what were some of the questions that they were asking?
That's bad. I'm not going to be able to tell them to you off the top of my head.
That's okay.
Yeah,
It was
I'm sorry.
like an underlying theme.
Definitely. That they were very concerned about how to manage being at home all the time, because these are the Lakers Online students, and being at home possibly with someone they don't get along with, or they're not able to communicate to their parents, learning how, definitely to cope through this changing time. And if your parents don't know how to cope, you don't know how to cope. They don't know how to, it's very easy. And I know we've talked about it before, as easy as listening to music or petting your dog or going for a walk. But if parents don't show that as a healthy coping mechanism, then the child may not be aware of how easy it is for them.
Lisa Berkey with us here on the Mega Cash. She's with the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition. With so many kids at home, not only do they have more access to weed if it's in the house, but you also wonder about our prescription drugs. We talk about this over and over and over. And I think prior to COVID, the opioid abuse and crisis was getting a lot of attention. It was making headlines. But those headlines have been overshadowed right now due to COVID-19. Are you worried about an increase of use and abuse by our kids?
Definitely. And I just heard a story from Sheriff Bouchard on the news about opioid abuse here in Oakland County. And he didn't necessarily say with our kids, but overall, Oakland County. So there, we have a DEA Take Back Day is this Saturday. And what's great about DEA Take Back Day is you can empty out your medicine cabinet of unused and expired meds. And that's the safest thing we all can do, is that keep the meds that we're using locked up. And if they're unused and expired, let's get rid of them. And that helps our community as a whole. You might say, I don't have anybody in my house that's going to do that. Well, you never know if your house will be broken into. Or we've also heard of when you have your house up for sale, that people will go into your medicine cabinets. So it's just a real safe way to help our community, is when you have expired medicine or unused, as West Bloomfield residents, you can take it to the police department, West Bloomfield Police Department, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. The only thing they don't accept are liquids and needles. But this coming Saturday, being it's DEA Take Back Day, it's just something we focus on. We always accept them here in West Bloomfield, but we focus and advertise this day more. And Keego Harbor is also going to be accepting them this Saturday as well. And their hours are 10 to 1, and West Bloomfield's are 10 to 2.
I'm glad that you're saying that, because I know that a lot of the police departments, they do close the smaller departments, and so they can't, they wouldn't be open unless you made an appointment to take them back. So that is good to know, because we were looking a few days ago, because we have a bunch of old pet medicine, and you have to remember, medicine is medicine, and you do not want to flush it down the toilet.
Very good point. Actually, 2 points you said. Definitely no flushing, no garbage disposal, because that hurts our water supply. But the pet meds are very, a lot of the meds are the same that people use. So you're right, meds are meds. And if there was a drug addict interested in any meds and you had them in the house for your dog, they'd be after those as well. So what I do is I have like a little bag, and when I get a few prescriptions, I just right away go to the police department. It's something to keep in mind when a lot of times from having your wisdom teeth pulled. You may get the prescription and you may only take 1 or 2, but then you've got this whole bottle. So you definitely want to get rid of them.
And how important is it as well for adults to be proactive? Should they be counting the pills and making sure that what they're using is matched with what is still in the bottle? Because, if it's one here, two there, it can be hard for them to know whether or not they're disappearing.
Definitely. If they're opioids, yes, I think they should be. They should have them locked up. If you have other people in the house with you, you should keep them away from them because you may not know if they have a drug problem or they know someone who has a drug problem. Also, people are very smart. As an example, if I know that my friend's son had his wisdom teeth pulled or just had surgery, a drug addict will know that and will try, for example, with wisdom teeth, stop over and bring your friend a milkshake, right? After they had their wisdom teeth out, the bottle's around and they will steal them. So yes, it's very important to us not leave them on the table, but to have them locked up. Same thing with grandparents, how they're on the dining room table in a lazy Susan. That is not a safe idea at all.
And it is so common. I'm like, I can see the image in my mind right now. It is so common, especially with, some of the older members of our families, because for them, a lot of them have several medications.
Definitely. I can actually give a personal example. My parents were in their late 80s living in Florida, and they did have someone that was on drugs that lived below them in their condo. And one day he came to the door and he asked them for some Tylenol. And I was so pleased that my father did not let him in because I know exactly what he would have been doing. He would have either here's an older man, tried to rob him for money, or look in their house for prescription drugs. So you've always got to be cautious.
We're speaking with Lisa Berkey. She's the executive director for the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition. Lisa, I know that you and your team are always hard at work. What other programming do you have coming up?
Well, a couple things. One, we're bringing in some vaping education program to our 9th grade health classes at West Bloomfield High School and Lakers Online. We are also going to be surveying our 7th, 9th, and 11th graders at both the West Bloomfield Middle School, West Bloomfield High School, and Lakers Online, just to find out a little bit more about what they're thinking about drugs and alcohol and mental health. I think right now that's more important than ever because we need to see what's going on with our youth and be ready for programming for next year. We always survey every other year, but we're implementing this extra one just because we need to know, especially with mental health, what's going on with our youth. We're bringing a vaping program into Our Lady of Refuge because we'll help the private schools in our areas as well. We have a Narcan training coming up for our JARA group. I know you talked to us about JARA, Jewish Addiction Resource Alliance. That is sometime in June, I believe, the second Tuesday, I think, in June. I'd have to check on the date for sure, but it will be on our website. And as soon as the summer hits, we'll start planning for the fall.
The time, well, some days it seems like it's standing still and we're living Groundhog Days. Other times it seems like it's going by so quickly. If we can dial back just for a second and talk a little bit more about vaping, because it seems like I'm seeing it more and more. And, at first I didn't even know what it was. And I'm an adult, so I wonder, are parents going through that as well? Because you don't smell it like you do cigarettes or weed.
Right, because it smells fruity. Yes, I am sure parents are going through it. Prior to COVID, we were educating our parents as often as possible. And like you said, certain topics were on the news all the time. And vaping was one of them. And now we don't hear about it at all on the news because COVID has taken over. But yes, we do need to continue to educate our parents about vaping, what they're looking for, what a vape looks like, because the kids are the vapes look just like a small flash drive, or there's even clothing that you can vape from, like the straw is on the sweatshirt pull string.
What?
Yes. If you Google that, you'll see vaping attire. So yes, parents need to know exactly what the signs and clues are going on. But yes, we're continuing to educate our kids about vaping. In fact, there was a program about a month ago that we were invited to, along with the Birmingham Bloomfield Coalition, and they had the young man who had the double lung transplant talking to about 100 kids about everything that he went through and still going through. He takes a ton of medication. He loved sailing. He will never be able to sail again. How COVID has affected him even more. And I think he's a senior in high school now. So, I mean, it totally changed his life.
And it's so important because I do feel like teenagers and kids, they'll listen to another teenager more so than they will us as adults.
Always. They want to hear from a peer. They don't want to hear from a parent at all.
Well, we hope that he is doing so much better, and such bravery for him to come out and share that story, especially now in the middle of COVID. And we are hearing more alarming, so many younger kids are getting COVID right now.
Yes, yes. And vaping is affects their lungs, and we all know COVID affects the lungs, so it's making it much harder on them.
So Lisa Berkey with us here on the MegaCast. She's the Executive Director for the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition. Lisa, just about another minute here with you on the programming before we have to say goodbye. How can people find more information, especially our parents? Because I'm like, vaping attire? I feel like a parent really has to be on top of everything today.
They do. They do. Just like when you prep your house for your child to learn to walk, you got to do it at every stage as your child gets older in your house. But our website, www.gwbcoalition.org, has information on alcohol, marijuana, prescription drugs, vaping. It always lists all our programs. And it also has a link to the Alliance of Coalitions for Healthy Communities, which manages 21 coalitions in Oakland County. So then you could see all the coalitions, and they all have a variety of information on their websites, like we do, about vaping or opioids, alcohol, recreational marijuana. And there's a ton out there, but parents definitely need to be on top of it and it's all about prevention.
Well, we always appreciate your time and your knowledge. Lisa Berkey, the Executive Director for the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you.